Hello and welcome to channel Duello. Today I'll be covering NR Witcher's deck in my Defense Guide series. In this guide, I'll be introducing this deck, its strengths and weaknesses, main threats, play around cards, macro and micro strategies, and then we'll discuss each faction and how they fare against this deck. And finally, I'll be showing you video footage from sample games. So if you're struggling against Northern Realms Witchers, hopefully you'll get better playing against them. Okay, Way of the Witcher expansion introduced plenty of Witcher cards to Gwent game, which was definitely much needed. And each faction got their fair share of Witcher cards, and we see some of them as staple cards in meta decks, like Gezras. But if you want to build a Witcher tribal deck or a Witcher theme deck, it looks like Northern Realms is the best suited faction for that. Especially thanks to Griffin Witcher Adept and his synergy with the student tokens. First, let's take a look at the lists that are popular on the ladder. Well, actually we have a solid core of cards that are untouchable and are in every Witcher decks. So let's take a look at them. I have four lists for you. As you see, the bronze cards are pretty much the same. We have Griffin Witchers, Witcher Adepts, Lyrian Scythemans, and we have Mentors in some of them, and some of them may not prefer to use them, but a single Mentor is usually good for the deck. And other than that, for the golden cards, we have the neutral Witchers, which are Berengar, Leo, and we have the Vesemir Mentor, Escott Lambert, and Vesemir Witcher Trio. Those cards are staples, so you cannot change them. And also Geralt Quen, so that's a really great card for this deck because he will seek out your missing Witchers from your deck. And other than that, we have Kaldar, which is the most powerful engine in this deck. And then we have Erland for carryover. And obviously Amphibious Assault, John Natalis, and Target Practice for our warfare package. Those are really essential cards, so there is no way you need to change these. However, the 10 provision or 11 provision slot is due to change depending on the meta and the opponents that Witcher's decks play against. They prefer to use some of the options here, like for example, and last month especially, Geralt of Rivia, the vanilla Geralt, was really popular, when we was around, and it was a great, let's say, a target punish, but for only single target. We also have the option to not use the 10-11 provision slot and just use the location and get an additional bronze Witcher cards like Griffin Witcher, Witcher Adept, or Mentor, or even a Ranger. But if you do that, you're missing a real crucial golden card. On the other hand, you have better consistency. So some people prefer to do that. And we also have Prince Ansei as an option since the leader is Uprising. Well, Prince Ansei used to be a staple in Uprising decks before Shield Wall came out, so he is really good. However, you don't have a lot of option to boost Prince Ansei, so you're not getting extreme value like you do in Shield Wall, but he is still a pretty good removal tool. And for our final option, and this is probably the most popular one right now, Geralt Earden. However, he is 11 provision, so you need to cut one of the bronze cards, especially one of the 5 cards is going to be transferred into a 4P card, or just don't use boiling oil. Anyway, these are our options, and lately Margarita has gotten a buff, so some people prefer to use her as a surprise card because you don't expect a Witcher deck to luck you, so she could be really your wild card in this deck. So these are our options. So it's pretty easy to devise your strategy because you know what the cards are. There are only a few surprises. So you can always expect what card to come up and what they will do. On the other hand, it's also easy to play this deck. So if you're playing a Witcher deck, it's pretty straightforward. You just need to decide which card to play first and then next, and pay attention to adrenaline numbers and so on. And as an opponent, you also have to pay attention to the adrenaline. So you need to be familiar with the deck in order to do that. So I definitely recommend playing with Witcher's decks to get better at defending them. Let's take a look at the strengths and weaknesses of the deck and how it works, unless you're familiar with it. Well, the theme is Witcher Swarm, so the more Witchers you have, the better it is. And there are some payoff cards for that, like Leo. His power depends on the number of Witchers on the board. And Berengar, he's a 9-powered card for only 6 provisions, but you need to have a Witcher next to him or on the same row. So, and we have Vesemir Mentor, which will boost all of the Witchers in the game, in your hand, and in the deck. So this is probably the best card in this deck. And we have the Witcher Trio, which is really handy, with all the hand boots and so on. They usually come into play with more than 9 power. 9 points. And there are some engines in this deck. As I mentioned before, these student tokens are going to be your engines, and Witcher Adapt tokens transfer these tokens to copies of themselves. So as long as you have a Witcher token Adapt on the board, you can keep producing these copies of himself, as long as you keep putting these tokens on the board. So that's a pretty good engine. And we have the Griffin Witcher himself, and this guy can ping 1 damage per turn, similar to Elf Swordmaster, but he locks himself after a while, which is Adrenaline 3 when you have 3 or less cards in your hand. But when he does that, when he is locked, he's gonna damage a random unit by 3, so you're getting even more value from him. So this is a pretty good engine, and probably needs to be dealt with. And don't forget about the Crystal Skull. And if the opponent is playing first, and if he can find his Griffin Witcher, he is going to immediately boost Griffin Witcher with Crystal Skull, and Crystal Skull will prevent him from locking himself. And which means that after Adrenaline 3, he is going to hit for 1 and then damage random unit by 3 every turn. This is really a broken mechanic. I'm pretty sure CD Projekt Red will fix it, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't fix it already, because it is broken. It isn't supposed to be working like that for only 5 provision card. Those were their engines. And carryover is a big important part of this deck. And I mentioned about Vesemir Mentor, and we have Erland of Larvik. Erland is kind of low tempo card. When he comes into play, he's just 4 powered, and you need to be really careful while playing him, because it could cost you the game or cost the Witcher deck the game. And so they prefer to play Erland or draw him in round 1. If they can't draw him, there are options for them. They have their consistency cards, like these mutation cards, and you can draw an adrenaline card, and Erland has adrenaline on it, so they usually draw him, or Vesemir Mentor if they have Erland in their hand. So it's no surprise that they play their Erland in their first round, and even Mentor also in the first round. So when the first round is over, almost all of their units are boosted by 2 as a total, and that's a really good value for them. So that's the power of the deck, actually, these hand boosts and carryover points. And they also have a Griffin Mentor, and this guy is really helping out with the consistency. If you have a brick in your hand, like maybe 2 Witcher trios, you can send one of them back and draw another card, and so on. So I think putting one of these is really important, so you should expect at least 1 from those decks. What about the threats? I mean, which cards to play around? Well, you should always be ready for Keldar. Keldar is the biggest threat in this deck. And when he comes into play, it's going to be Adrenaline 3, and the opponent will have 4 more turns until the round is over, and this guy will keep producing those tokens every turn. And in addition to that, if they have the Witcher Adapt, that Adapt will transfer those tokens into 4-point cards. So that's a really powerful engine. So if you're playing against Witcher decks, you should always save a removal for Kaldar or a lock or something like that. And don't forget that, well, Kaldar's original power is 4 and armor, so you need 5 damage. However, if the opponent has carryover points, so this guy could be 5-1 or 6-1, so you could need a 7-point, no, a 6-point removal for Kaldar. So he's no 7-point Kaldar, so it's not easy to remove. So it's no surprise that we see Heatwave being used on him, and it's definitely worth it. This guy is really dangerous. And then they could have Boiling Oil, 1 or 2, or maybe no Boiling Oil, but there's always the risk of getting boiled by this card. It's only 5 damage, so it's really sometimes worth taking the risk. If they have Boiling Oil, if they have it, it's definitely worth taking the risk. And since the opponent knows that they probably only have 1 Boiling Oil, they will be really careful about selecting their targets. But don't forget about that. I already mentioned Crystal Skull and Griffin Witcher combo, and if they play it on first turn, you're screwed, because after Adrenaline 3, you're gonna get hit by 3 every turn, and you should try to remove this guy. And it's sometimes worth taking a Heatwave as well, unless the opponent they don't have scenarios, so that could be your best Heatwave target overall in the game. Maybe Curse of Corruption, something like that. And also the 10-11 provision slot, which is due to change. Prince Sensei is really dangerous, so don't be let's say it's not guaranteed that your cards will survive. Out of the blue, the opponent can play Prince Sensei and kill your engine, so keep that in mind. How are you going to understand that they're running Prince Sensei? Well, if they have 2 of those boost units, those royal guards, it's usually a sign of Prince Sensei. Other than that, it's really hard to tell. But you should always keep track of the provision on the cards that they played. So they can't have, for example, both Yrden and Prince Sensei, so they need to have one of those powerful cards. And those Geralt of Rivia, Geralt Yrden, and rarely some people use Igni. So don't forget about these Geralt cards as well. But they will be probably their last or second to last play. If you're especially if you really have boosted units, don't line them up. Try to separate them, because Yrden is expected. So Yrden is the most popular one, so get ready for be Yrden. If you're playing Skellige, that's good, because Yrden will not affect you at all. What about the weaknesses of this deck? As you see, it's really a strong deck. The point potential is huge, because it has great synergy with all the cards in it. However, there are some weaknesses. For example, they don't have control tools. These are their only control tools, so that's not a lot actually. 1 Boiling Oil and pings from Griffin Witcher and maybe a random Igni or Yrden, something like that, or Prince Sensei, so not much. So they can't deal with engines. Maybe they can deal with one of your engines, but if you have an engine overload deck, just play them. Don't save them for another time or something like that, because you're going to need points, and you need to build your engines and get stronger every turn. And they don't have answer to scenarios. This is not a devotion deck, however, they don't have room to slot in a Heatwave. So don't be scared that your scenario will get Heatwaved. They don't have Purify, so defenders and the units behind defenders are safe. They can't deal with defenders. Prince Sensei can somewhat kill defenders, but it's not really enough. And there really isn't no need. Maybe if they're running Geralt of Rivia, they need to get behind the defender, but they can't run both Geralt and Prince Ansei. However, still, Ansei is a pretty good option, and they are susceptible to roll reset and toll punish. So we will see a lot of boosted units on their board, and so Yrden is scary for them. And toll punish, especially Leo, can get really big, so you can punish a big, huge, chunky Leo. What about the strategy against Witchers? The macro strategy is pretty straightforward actually. The Witcher deck will try to win round 1 and try to bleed you on second round and get a short run in round 3. Because by the time the round 3 starts, they will have boosted units on their hand, and especially boosted by 2 units, so that's a lot of point. Even small bronze cards like the Witcher Mentor will come into play with 7 power, so that's a lot in a short round. So they will prefer to play the final round as a short round, and they will try to bleed you, especially with the Witcher trio in the second round. So winning round 1 is crucial if you don't want to get bled. And while doing that, you may need to commit a lot, and they will maybe only use their bronze cards and carryover cards, and this is really a bad situation for you. And especially if you're running cards like Yrden, you shouldn't overcommit. I mean, final say is important, but not that important. You can always play your Yrden, and then they can play their card, but Yrden is really lethal for them. And depending on your deck hand, bleed or dry pass. That means if you won the first round, what are you going to do? Are you going to bleed them or not? It's usually not a bad idea to bleed the Witcher's deck, because they are really good, especially with the Witcher trio. But if they used Witcher trio in the first round, maybe you can think about bleeding. And you need to also depend on your short round. Your short round needs to be strong to defeat them. Like if you're running monsters, maybe bleeding could be an option in the second round. And if you have a better long round than them, you should definitely dry pass, and you're always gonna win, especially if you have several control cards in your hand. So that should be your macro strategy. What about some micromanagement? What do you need to do? You need to kill or lock their engines and Witchers. Well, as you see, the Adept are really dangerous, and the Griffin Witchers. So you should try to kill them or lock them. And decreasing the number of Witchers is also a good idea, because Vesemir and Leo will not get as many value. And also boosting is important. Try to damage their boosted units. Why? Because the leader is uprising, and if they have a lot of boosted units, which are green health units, they will get a lot of value from the Illyrian Scytheman that they spawn from their leader ability. They also have Scythemans in their hand, in their deck, and they also can come really fat. So denying them of boosted value, green health value, is really important. As I mentioned before, Kaldar is crucial, so you should reserve your answer or solution for him. And finally, pay attention to Adept Order ability. And why is that? Well, Adept can transform a unit to himself, and let's say try to destroy the unit that has Order ability still on for them. So, for example, if you are trying to, kill a Witcher that is a potential to be transformed into a student Adept, it's not a good idea to kill it, because, that point loss is for nothing, because that Witcher will be transformed into Witcher Adept. So pay attention to that as well. Also pay attention to the adrenaline numbers. So you should know, for example, if they have 3 cards left in their hand, they can play Keldar. In the first round, they can't play their Vesemir, in the, let's say, first 2 or 3 turns, because Vesemir has adrenaline 5. Also the Witcher trio, they have adrenaline 4. So they cannot play those cards before that turn. That's also important. And finally, as I said many times, Geralt Yrden is the antidote for this deck, so he is your best friend when you're playing against Witchers. However, Yrden is a tech card, so Yrden can win you some games, but because of that you can lose some games. You know, you can only play it for a 3 or 4 point card, which is really a waste for 11 provision cards. So it's a risk. So if you're seeing a lot of Witchers on the ladder, if you're facing Witcher opponents, yeah, maybe you can play Yrden in your deck. Okay, so I hope this information helps, but I'm gonna be talking more, for example, about specific factions. And if you're playing this faction, should you choose long round against Witchers or not? I'm going to talk about that, and finally show you a couple of videos from the games that I played in the past. Now let's talk about the factions, their typical decks right now, at the moment I'm shooting this video, and how they fare against Witcher decks and what they need to do to win the game. Let's start with Monsters faction. Currently, Monster's best deck is Carapace deck, the Ciri-Calculus deck. This deck is, I would say, favored against it, because this deck has lots of removal against the Witchers. However, those Witcher tokens could be problematic for Calculus, because the opponent will keep producing those tokens and they will be food for Calculus. So you need to be, really careful with Kaldar. So you need to kill him so that he doesn't produce those pesky 2 tokens. Other than that, I think it's pretty standard. You can safely play your Ciri without Cave Troll in the first round. They can't remove it, and just hit one of the leader ability here on her. They don't have that much power to kill her, and if they keep pinging her, and if there's a boiling oil threat, you can always boost her with Adrenaline Rush or Pact or something like that, unless they're running Geralt of Rivia. So you could maybe play around with having Ciri less than 9 power. Other than that, I think this is a really good matchup for Monster's Carapace. Does Monster have other decks? Not really. Well, V deck is kinda non-existent, but I faced one of them yesterday, which was really frustrating. I mean, the deck lost its power, but still annoying deck to play against. And you could play Thrive decks. Well, Thrive decks are powerful, but the Witcher engines can compete with Thrive. And plus, if they have Yrden, I mean, it's game over for you, because all the Thrive units will be, reset to their normal forms. So I think Witchers are favored against a Thrive deck. And Monsters is kind of tricky. You kind of want to play a short round, but Witcher's deck is also good at short round. So I think it's a tough matchup for Monsters generally, but for Carapace it's a different story. So Carapace has the options, the necessary control options to handle Witcher decks. For Nilfgaard, well, Masquerade Ball is still the most popular card for Nilfgaard, so different leaders use different versions of Masquerade Ball with control options, Brathens, and other, Usurper, Coup de Grace, and those kind of cards. I mean, selection of cards choices differ from deck to deck. However, it's still the same. I think it's a toss-up between Witchers and Nilfgaard. In some cases, if Nilfgaard players draw bad, they will lose. And especially, well, the strategy for Witcher player is win the first round and then bleed out the Masquerade Ball from the Nilfgaard player. So you should do whatever necessary to keep Masquerade Balls safe. And if you feel like they're gonna get your Masquerade Ball no matter what, you should play it early in the second round, maybe, just to get out of it. But if you are getting bled, it's really important to get card advantage out of it. And if you're, if the opponent still has last say, and if you have the same number of cards, you can lose the game because they will have boosted units on their side. And Keldar is an excellent Yennefer's invocation target because you can use him after invocating him, especially if you somehow manage to not use him in the same round and start with him on the third round. It's game over and you win the game, I think. Other than that, we have that Lockdown Nova and that Cancer deck, and it really depends on how the Witcher player draw their cards, and if their hand is kind of full of bronzes, they can struggle. But don't forget that they have those Yrden cards or Geralt cards, so that's really threatening for Colgrim and his friends. So you should try to, divide the units. So Defender is not that important in this matchup because they don't have purifies or anything, and they can reach your Colgrim or Viper Witcher Mentors with Yrden anyway. So it's best to divide the rows. And it's best that you don't play this deck at all, because it's not good for the health of the game. So hopefully, when you're watching this, maybe the deck guide, defense guide, that deck will be nerfed or something like that, changed, so that we don't have to see it again. What about other Nilfgaard decks? Well, you can play Tactic Heavy and Slave deck. I think that could be a better matchup compared to a regular Nilfgaard deck, because you will have lots of removal tactics, and a Hefty Helga should be a nightmare for Witcher cards. And what about Assimilate Engines? Well, Assimilate Engines, have huge points potential as well, so you can definitely compete for first round, but their short round is better than yours. So that's a big disadvantage, and they can compete with your long round. I think trying to answer their important cards is important, and again, Keldar is important. If you're somehow running Yennefer's Invocation, save it for Keldar. But if you're just using pure Assimilate, that could be a problem for you. Maybe filling their side of the board could be a strategy so that they can't play their cards. So fill out their rows with your spies and so on. That could be helpful. But it's a tough matchup for Assimilate, in my opinion. Let's move to Northern Realms. Well, Northern Realms have obviously the mirror match. If both players are playing Witchers, I think having last say and using Yrden is the key to victory. If you're not using Yrden and opponent is using Yrden, you're screwed. And for some reason you should get an advantage by killing their Keldar, but you don't have the tools. Maybe if you're running Prince Ansei, you can remove Keldar, but still if they have Yrden, you can lose the game. So it all kind of depends on who gets the first round and round control and having the last say, so that you can get more points from your Scytheman compared to your opponent. If you're playing Shield Wall is favored against obviously Witchers. You have the dual units and some control options, and you can compete for first round. You have solid engines as well. I think the advantage goes to Shield Wall in this matchup. And you should always prefer long round. Yeah, you're better at long round, especially they don't have answers to Visigoda, and so if you put your Visigoda and your shield guy, and then Trident infantry, you can bombard their side of the board. And also pay attention to Yrden. So using the charges on the very final say could be a better option. Squirtle. Again, this is a 50-50, or maybe slightly advantage goes to Witchers maybe. And I don't think Squirtle can win the first round against Witchers. Maybe that movement heavy decks can win, but you need to really draw well to do that. And if you feel like you're gonna lose the first round, I wouldn't recommend committing a lot in the first round. Just save your good cards for the second round, because you're going to get bled. and you're gonna see a sample video following this. So I think defending the second round and somehow, you know, coming up with card advantage can maybe win you the game. And if you're playing a precision control cancer deck, this is again not good for the health of the game, and they're usually playing the bomb version, Madoc version. You have, you know, a huge amount of removal options. I think you're favored against it, although they can put multiple units on the board. Your, let's say, tiger could lose value because of that, but still, you have lots of, you know, removal options, especially with the bombs. I think this deck is favored against Witchers, and this deck is great at red coin, and the other deck is good at blue coin. So I think, you know, but you should, get the last say, because your gourd could be Yeardent. So if you have the last say, you're fine. Any other squad elf decks? The elf decks, some of them use movement, some of them use scenario. I think elf decks are favored against it, especially if you're drawing your cards at the right time, and, you know, playing, let's say, carefully. You can win the game. And suppose you win the first round with your movement cards, you can go ahead and bleed the opponent with your actually feign death scenario, because they don't have answer to feign death, and you can maybe 2-0 them, because if they don't have green healths on the board, if they don't have units on the board, they can't win the round. So that's an option. And if you lose the first round, if they tried to bleed you and you defended it, you're going to be favored in the long round. So the longer the round, the better, I guess. And Skellige. If you're playing Ursine Ritual Lippy, I think Witchers are favored, and especially Lippy lost its power a bit, and Witchers have lots of point potential. They cannot answer everything that you put on the board, and I think eventually Witchers will persevere, and Lippy is cancer too, so I don't like that deck anyway. And if you're using Warriors or Scene Ritual or any kind of Warriors deck, I think you're favored, but it's not a cakewalk. You should be really careful when to play the card and what. Morkwark is really important, so save him. And Trigvi is, you know, good for Berengar. And those shield units and the transformation adapt, you know, engine could be bothersome. So you should eliminate them as soon as possible. But still, Skellige is a good matchup. So Witchers will struggle playing against Skellige, the classic Skellige warrior. Do we have another Skellige deck? I think Gedenith was popular last month. It's still a viable deck, but it's not as strong as the Warriors deck, in my opinion. Gedenith has huge points potential as well, but if the opponent is using Yrden, you're gonna lose the game. You can't do much about it, I think. And for Syndicate, there's not really much to talk about. Syndicate is really in a bad position when I'm shooting this video. Hopefully, if you watch this video, I mean next month, things will change, and, you know, see the project, right? Hopefully buff some of the cards. It's really weak right now. And for Syndicate, if you're running a classic version of, let's say, Hidden Cache, you can produce lots of points. You can compete with them. But their short round is really good. They're both short and long round. But I think somehow you can find the way to victory. Still, you can come up short. And your Passiflora is safe, so that's good. But again, I think it all comes down to Yrden. If they're running Yrden, you should separate the roles and try to protect your engines so that you don't get a tremendous amount of Yrden value. For Congregation, well, Congregation has those Fallen Knights, and Fallen Knights could be targets of Vanilla Geralt or again Yrden, so that's a problem. But the other units are usually low-level units. But Griffin Witcher could be problem for you, so removing Griffin Witcher should be your priority. And removing them won't be too hard for Congregation because they have some damage. However, if the opponent played Crystal Skull on Griffin Witcher as the first move, that's a problem for you. So you need to use a couple of removal tools on the Griffin Witcher, because you don't have Toll Punish in your deck. Congregation doesn't have one running Devotion, and they can't find answer to everything. So I guess that's about it for factions. Now you're gonna see two sample videos from my previous games. So hopefully that will give you some idea what to do. First, I'm going to show you a first round example. So first round is really important, and you should try to win first round, as I said before. And I am playing Skellige Ursane Ritual against Witchers, and I have blue coin. Normally having blue coin is a disadvantage, but not against Witcher's deck. And Witcher's deck are really good at blue coin, especially with the Crystal Skull and Griffin Witcher start. And now I need especially the ships and some removing tools and some, oppressive tools like those Brokegar Hunter, and the ship is pretty good. And I'm throwing away a stunning blow, and this hand looks good. I don't want to risk too much. Now I'm gonna have a similar start and put a Crystal Skull on the Uncreate Longship, and that's really gonna bother my opponent a lot, especially if Griffin Witcher Adapt comes into play. They will get immediately pinged, and not surprisingly they play their Griffin Witcher, and that's a target that needs to be killed, but not as urgent as you think. So I have few options here. I can play Raiders or Brokegar Hunter. If I play Raiders, I can set up a kill with Brokegar Hunter probably, or I can just Gutting Slash and get rid of Griffin Witcher. So there are options. So, and whichever route you take, I think it's mostly correct. Let's see what I have done here. It looks like I'm gonna be using Uncreate Raiders, and I still think this is the correct choice here, better choice, let's say. It's okay to take a ping here. At the same time, my opponent can play the target practice cards, which could be bothersome. But still, I can kill it eventually. Let's fast forward a bit. And my opponent plays Amphibious Assault into one of the adapts. That adapt will get hit by the ship, so there won't be any shield. Now I can remove Griffin Witcher easily and cheaply with Brokegar Hunters remain first. Pink, thanks to his Zeal ability, now the Griffin Witcher is gone. However, they have a legitimate target over there with 9 power. And if they manage to put some student tokens on the board, that guy will transform them immediately. And I have no immediate way to deal with that adapt. Here comes Selective Mutation. That's the best card for this scenario, and my opponent immediately transformed the token into an adapt. I'm not rushing into killing the adapt there, the token over there, but there's an argument, like, I could have used Blood Eagle to destroy it. Now, the thing is, if I hit the student there, that's going to reduce to 1. However, my opponent will, use the adapt here and transform it into a 4. So that could have been a 1 point waste there. So I prefer to hit the boosted adept over there. And here comes another token, thanks to target practice, and my opponent is really doing a good job of using these tokens and recycling those adapts. It becomes really hard for me to deal with. But maybe now I can use Blood Eagle since it's becoming more and more dangerous. Maybe I should have done that turn earlier. And I think it's the best choice here. And what to get? Well, looks like my opponent is threatening me to win on even cards. So I use series over there. I know that's a lot of points, but I think it's worth it. And on top of that, I'm thinning my deck. So I got rid of the bricks. And now I have a 15-point lead, which isn't, small. And my opponent needs to build some engines, to get some value from Vesemir and so on. Here comes Ireland, so that's an indication of pass in the next turn. And as you see, that is the right move, by the way. You should almost always transform Ireland. And thanks to the Brockwar Hunter's pink, I removed the shield and finally got rid of that engine. So there won't be any adapt, but still order ability on him. Now this is a tough situation for my opponent. They have 18 points, I have 34, but they cannot develop engines as easily as they could. And I am still running mostly bronze cards. I had to use series, but it was worth it. And I still have a Bear Witcher in hand, so I can keep playing bronze cards. And here comes Vesemir Mentor with the help of Geralt Gwent. And he gets pinged, obviously. But they got their second hand boost. Fortunately, they didn't boost a lot of units on the boards, only 4 units. So I still have an option to pass here. I am 6 points ahead. But I'm gonna use one more bronze card here, Bear Witcher. And I'm gonna kill one of the Witchers there, which is Geralt Gwent. So I got rid of a Witcher and a green health unit. So this was a really good kill. The point difference is still 6. My opponent used Amphibious Assault, so he can't, pass me. He could have, actually, if he had Berengar. And here comes another adapt, and that is the last adapt they have in their deck, unless they're running the location. That's good for me, actually. Unfortunately, I can't kill it, so the pink that Brockwar Hunter isn't helping me much. And what I can do is play Trigby here, but keep in mind that Trigby's main target should be Berengar, because Berengar has 9 power, non-boosted, so that's especially if you're playing Trigby in the last round, it's gonna bring you 16 points total. However, I still think I should win round 1, and I'm still trying to do that by running Trigby earlier than expected. And I selected that 7-powered Witcher over there. His base power is 4, so he's gonna get hit by 4, and he immediately transforms into a 4. So I think he saved 1 point from that move, but it's not that much. And here comes the Witcher trio, which is really surprising. Okay, I was trying to win first round, but my opponent decided that he should win it and played one of the biggest threats in his deck early. And that's good for me, because now it will be difficult for my opponent to bleed without the Witcher trios. That was really a crucial part of the deck. That's why I selected to pass over there. Morkwark is a huge card, and I can defend the bleed with totem in my hand. And by the way, the version I'm running is kinda old, so the current one, I don't have totem. But totem is still a pretty good card, especially this will help me a lot in this turn, because my opponent will probably try to bleed me even though he doesn't have the Witcher trio. This hand looks good. If my opponent decides to pass, I can use the Uncrate Raider over there. If he doesn't, I have good options to defend the bleeds actually. Blue Boy Lugos is a good target to pull up with the Blood Eagle and Amphibious Assault into Keldar. So my opponent decided to bleed me with Keldar, and Keldar comes into play as you see with 6 power, 1 armor, so I need 7 points of removal to get rid of him. And I don't have an immediate answer for it, but now as you see it's become 9 power, so he used 2 leader charges on him, which could have been more helpful for him, by the way. And I have 4 charges that I can use with Blue Boy. What I can do is I can bring the Blue Boy and probably kill Keldar, but I think I'm making a mistake here, but in the end it won't be that much of a deal. What I could have done is just hit the Keldar with Blood Eagle and then use the remaining charges to kill Keldar. Instead, I decided to kill the token he created and then ping Keldar, but as you see the pings are not enough, and I didn't want to use further because I can't kill him. But I'm deciding that, you know, since I have the Vabion in hand, it is possible for me to kill him. However, target practice comes in and Keldar is back to 7. So this is a problem, so my decision was not that good. Okay, I'm taking the last charge here, you know, worst case scenario, I can kill the token, but this is the best case scenario here, hitting Keldar, because I can kill Keldar. I have Stunning Blow in this version of the deck. And Keldar is gone, and I'm 4 points ahead. This has become real good for me. My opponent used 2 leader charges. If he wants to use the remaining leader charges, he won't get a lot of value. So I'm in really a good position here. And let's see what my opponent will play. Here comes Leo, since he has 3 Witchers on the board. And this is a good choice in my opinion. Now he's ahead of me by 5. I need 6 points. I can get 6 points with Totem, more than 6 points. At the same time, if I do that, Uncrate Raiders will come into play with only 5. So sequencing them is really important. But I think I want to stay ahead of the opponent, so that's why I preferred to use the totem here. And I definitely don't want to use more Quark here. My opponent can pass though, because he doesn't have lots of green health units on the board. I'm sure he is reluctant to use his leader here. And let's skip forward a bit. Yeah, he passes. So as you see, I mean, I don't want to keep playing this video. I won the game, obviously. First round, you should try to win first round. And if you cannot win, if the opponent is persistent and keeps dropping bombs on you, let him. And in the first round, I didn't spend a lot of cards. I used mostly bronze cards, and he had to use some crucial cards, especially the Witcher trio, and that cost him the game. If he had Witcher trio in second round, and he could have bled me, and instead he tried to bleed me, I won the round and came up with a card advantage, and that card advantage really won me the game here. So if my opponent, you know, didn't use the Witcher trio, he would have lost the first round. So maybe he had to do it, and if he loses first round, I'm gonna dry pass, no matter, because my hand is better, my deck is better in long round. So I kind of forced my opponent to do that choice, and it turned out pretty good. Okay, so let's move to another game. Now I'm playing a Scoia'tael deck, My opponent won the first round, which they usually do. The Witcher decks kinda like getting first round because they have the tools to do that, and he decided to bleed me, and which is the right thing to do actually. The deck I'm running has Water of Broccolon, a kind of an interesting choice, but it worked out for me. But I'm not currently using this deck anyway, so it helps me to, create a long row, and plus they have the Harmony tech. And as you see, my opponent got their carryovers, so these units are bigger than they are supposed to be. Okay, so what to do here? I have to defend the bleed and somehow come up with a victory with a card advantage. Card advantage is really important, and my opponent will try to force me into playing Gazras here. That should be his goal, but while doing that, he shouldn't lose the final say. And what I aim to do is I want to get card advantage and get the last say. Here comes Cadwani Knight with, as you see, Amphibious Assault. So all of a sudden 19 to 8. So it's a lot of points. And I want to catch up and pass the opponent, but it's not doable right now. That's why I kind of want to develop my engines. So playing a Dwarf will trigger the Harmony for the Dryads over there. And then I can play maybe a Treant. That Oak seems good. Not Oak, the Forest Protector Oak. And here comes Keldar. And my opponent boosted the Keldar a bit to be protected from Nature's Rebuke. But however, I have the leader charges over there. So I have 3 charges and 2 extra damage from the Broccolon Sentinels. And I need to kill it. No matter what. And I have to. As you see, Forest Protector isn't enough, so I need 8 points of damage. What I'm doing is using all the charges on Keldar and reduces health to 5, and then use the death blow on the Witcher next to him, which is really good. I kill one of the Witchers, so the less Witchers the better. And instead of using Forest Protector here, I prefer to use Fav. I think I didn't have Rebuke in the graveyard. I think I had, but using Fav is better here because Forest Protector would have been kind of overcommitment here. Since my opponent is way behind me, he keeps going with cheaper bronze cards. And now it's 27-27, and fortunately I have a cheap bronze card here. I'm gonna use a Purify here, and I have Dryad on the board, so I'm getting the Vitality boost as well. Now it's 27-31, and I'm gonna have to use my good cards here, and I lost the leader. And losing the leader is kind of a big deal because it won't be easy to form a long row for Great Oak. And here comes the Witcher trio, and here comes the final charge of leader and the Scytheman. All of a sudden, with only I guess 3 cards, it's 55 points, which is crazy. And using Call of the Force, I immediately call Gazras, and as you see, my opponent smartly passes, and somehow he managed to not lose card advantage. So this was well played by my opponent. Because Gazra's hits on the front row won't be enough. Maybe my opponent could have used some of his cards on the back row, but he didn't. And as you see, I had 3 great cards, so I had to choose which one is the worst here. Well, I picked the Herald Court here because my deck isn't that spell heavy, special card heavy. So Gord will not find a tremendous value here, but Force Protector is already boosted with 7 and 5 damage is on the way with Rebuke, so Force Protector is the best card in my hand. Great Oak will be good if I can somehow form a roll. But I used most of my cards, so I only have 8 cards remaining in the deck. So I'm positive that I will somehow find a way to create a long roll. Especially I have Aethne still in the deck. She could help me a lot. Now let's see. So my opponent still has final say. We both used our leader charges and I drew pretty good here. I gotta admit. As you see, I have 5 worse bronze cards in the deck. Circle of Life. Which one is better? Circle of Life or one of these? I decided to keep Circle of Life to boost one of the units in my hand. But I could have mulliganed. So that wasn't the best of play in my opinion. Anyway, but the first moves are obvious. I gotta play Aethne and then Treant Boar to get the engine running in a short round, relatively short round. But still, that Boar will bring me, value. And here comes another Griffin Witcher. You could say like, okay, the round is getting over. Why is he using Griffin Witchers here? Well, with Adrenaline 3, as you see, I got 2 times 3 damage. One of them, unfortunately, went to one of the Symbiosis Drives over there. However, the other went to Boar, and Boar healed himself. So that was a bad roll. Here comes target practice. It's also nice that in case he has Scytheman in the hand and the green health, won't help you. And I'm also, as you see, removing Witchers. Just in case, Leo. Here comes Amphibious Assault into a giant Radowitz Royal Guards. It's gonna bring him 9 points and 2 more. It looks like I got this. I don't have a death blow on my Nature's Book. However, still it's 16-point play. No, 14-point play. I just use the Triumph Boar, and that's a lot of points. He can't do that with a single card. As you see, that card is a tech card, Geralt Earden, and I don't have, huge units on the board. That card could have helped him a lot if he had it in the second round, especially the Gazra's row. Okay, I hope this video helps you. And what I was trying to achieve here is Witchers are a popular deck and could be some pain in the ass for some. So hopefully that will help. And as you see, this is not a really difficult deck to play against. However, they have lots of points potential, so you need to be really careful, especially with the macro strategies. When to push, when to defend the bleed and so on, when to let go. Okay, thank you for watching, and hope to see you in another Duello video. And if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you still haven't subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. I will keep producing content on a, let's say, every other day basis. And bye bye.